Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody to Simplex-IT's yet another one of our fun-filled webinars. This one is going to be Introduction to Cyber Insurance. I'm Bob Coppedge, the CEO of Simplex-IT, and this time the only way I can say this is that everyone is going to be really, really fortunate on this because I'm not the primary speaker. So we all know the disappointment that we have whenever I'm the person who speaks and all that kind of thing. So we actually have Josh Barker, who's with TechRug, a company that specializes with our topic, which is cyber insurance. And I'm going to basically talk for about 5 minutes or so, give the overview of Simplex-IT and the like, and then I'm going to turn it over to Josh. I will, of course, being the annoying person I am, ask a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap it up. And hopefully it will take about half an hour to do this. And this meeting is being recorded, and it'll be placed up on LinkedIn, or excuse me, YouTube. I got my social media mixed up within the next couple of days. So real quick, just for those, we always have our NASCAR slide with all the companies Simplex-IT works with. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, of course it is. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our Simplex-TM, our training option that we've just added. We will be pushing out, we're going to be offering a free about 90-minute online Windows 10 class that's going to be available whether you're a customer of ours or not. Look for that on the blog, Twitter, and all that kind of fun stuff. Also, they said it couldn't be done without pictures. I finished my book, CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology. I am now an Amazon bestseller, and I want to stress it is nowhere near as impressive as that sounds. So in any case, but the book is available, and we deal with some topics such as cyber insurance. And then we also have, finally, we have what our other webinar and lunch and our topics coming up tomorrow. In fact, we got another webinar on IT policy and procedures. We then will be back to actual product. We're talking about Microsoft Teams on March 6th, cybersecurity strategies on March 14th. On the 20th, we're going to take a look at Microsoft's 2018 product roadmap. And then this will be cool. On April 11th, this is actually going to be at our office here in Stowe. We actually have a guy from Amazon who is part of the whole Internet of Things. He's an evangelist for their product line, and he's going to come in and do a talk and demo and just introduction to Internet of Things and where that's all going. And that's a free, all of these are free, they're open to the public, these are not sales pitches. So, with that, Bob gets quiet. So, and of course if I was smart I would just shut up. But what we really wanted to do here was to have a discussion about why cyber insurance really matters to companies. And one of the challenges that we've seen when we talk to our customers is in a lot of cases they're talking to insurance agents or insurance companies that have cyber insurance, but their agents don't actually even understand the product or what it means. So I've invited Josh and to talk about it. And Josh, take it away. I'm going to add your PowerPoint to this, but it might take a second.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, thanks for having me. Everybody, thanks for attending. Like Bob said, we are an agency that specializes in writing cyber liability insurance. We've been doing this for probably 15 years or so, and kind of like he alluded to, this is a murky market. The reason I say that is it's an unregulated product. So what you have with one carrier isn't necessarily the same as what you're going to find with the next carrier. So not all policies are created equal. And for you, the consumer, what makes it even more difficult is when companies do offer the same coverages, they may not even call them the same things. So to make heads or tails of it is very difficult from your standpoint. And as he said, there's a lot of agents out there who don't get it either. So it's maybe one of those things that isn't always brought up. But as we kind of go forward, this just seems to be the trend. This is the threat. We see it all the time on the news, social media. It's everywhere. You don't see bank robberies anymore. The things that you see are hacks, breaches, the WannaCry virus that came out, I believe it was last summer, and everybody's worried about, the widespread effects of that stuff. Those are just going to continue to become more and more common. Obviously, we partner up with an MSP and hope that they can help us out with all of our needs, but at the end of the day, there's just no 100% bulletproof solution. You may be putting the right practices and procedures in place, but there's still areas that just aren't covered. And that's why I think it's critical for everybody out there to have some form of cyber insurance to protect those pieces that aren't really picked up by your MSP. And there's an emissions policy. Let me see here. Am I able to move to the next slide, Bob, or how do I do this?
You ask.
Perfect. All right. So when we look at the breaches we've seen historically, this is from a 2016 study. There's a lot of areas that it comes from. If you look over there on the right side, the hackers, the malwares and virus, system glitches even, those make up about 50% of all the breaches that we see. So what does that mean to you? 50% of the other stuff that's going on out there isn't the responsibility of your MSP. That's on you guys. So the lost or stolen laptops. If you leave an unencrypted laptop at Starbucks and somebody gets a hold of it, whatever information's on there, that's not your MSP's fault. That's going to be your responsibility to take care of whatever happens after it's confiscated or stolen. Staff mistakes. These ones are very common. Not sure what backgrounds we have attending here, but let's just say, for example, you're in the medical profession. You've got a bunch of patient information that maybe you've got to fax over to a different facility, and somebody looks at an old form, sends it to the wrong number. Now all of a sudden we've got an unintentional breach. There's a violation there, and per the rules, there's a lot of things that have to be followed up on after that. Same thing with paper records. If you've got information that you don't shred properly or you're not taking care of properly, those are all things that the MSP isn't responsible for. So I think some people don't realize the amount of exposure that they actually have on their hands. And that's kind of what I'm here to do, is scare you, let you know what the real reality of your exposure is, and maybe show you some things you want to look for if you're interested in eliminating some of those perils and scary things.
Josh, two things if I can jump in on this.
Yes, sir.
Because I can't stay quiet. It just doesn't happen terribly well. Is one of the things to piggyback on what you're saying as far as the insurance and the way that the world is changing is more and more of the actual security vendors, whether it be Symantec, McAfee, our favorite Sophos, are not only are they in the world of prevention where they're trying to prevent the bad things from happening, but they're also becoming more and more involved with the idea of containment. Of how the bad guy happened, the bad event, the bad actor occurred. How do we then minimize? And I think it's part of the industry is basically saying that you can't prevent everything bad from happening. So there has to be some strategies behind the scenes to help that. Similarly, on the other side, to your point on like staff mistakes, paper records, lost stolen devices, is there's a lot more attention being paid to employee training of what exactly is a bad wireless network. Why is it important to have passwords? Why is encryption so important? And it's kind of both of those concepts have not caught on quite as much as some of the other stuff do, but they're really critical when any company, whether they have an MSP or not, when any company is looking to improve their overall security. And that's why cyber insurance is also as important. It really piggybacks well onto these concepts. So anyway.
Absolutely.
Cool.
If you want to move to the next slide. There we go. All right, so what we're looking at here is just a quick breakdown of some of the things that are trending, I guess, in the marketplace. So as we move forward, every year is going to be the highest number on record where we've seen either losses, amount, and the cost of these losses. The reason for that stuff is that it's just more accessible. If you look 10, 15 years ago, the amount of people that were operating online, the things that you did over the web just weren't as abundant as they are today. We do everything digitally. So you're always going to see that trend going. I think I read something where in the next 3 or 4 years, you're going to see cyber carriers pay out more money in claims, significantly more than they have in the last 10 years combined. So the exposure is there, and this isn't just the big companies. The stuff that we see on TV, the Targets, the Equifax, Ashley Madison, all those bigger companies, they make the news because it's clickbait. It basically draws people in. Oh, I shop at Target. I know about Home Depot. All those things. But the majority of the stuff that happens out there, it's the smaller companies. It's not appealing. It's not going to draw a lot of an audience. So they happen all the time. And the unfortunate part is 60% of the small companies can't continue to move forward like a Target would. So they're out of business. Come 6 months later, especially 12 months, that number goes up even more significantly. So without having some sort of insurance to properly protect yourself, you're just hoping that you're part of that 40% that can keep going forward. I guess if we look down kind of at the bottom point here, a lot of folks may say, hey, I don't have that exposure. I'm not a doctor's office. I'm not an attorney. I don't have these sensitive regulatory pieces of information, PII, PHI. But in reality, the definition of personally identifiable information, it does vary from state to state, but for the most part, they treat a cell phone number, an email address, really a billing address, everything that's kind of listed here, they're treated exactly the same. So whether you lose somebody's email address or their social security number, you now have the same responsibility to notify that affected individual and start following up all the steps that go into post-breach reaction. If you're going to move over to the next slide, we'll kind of touch on some of those. Right, here we go. All right, so what we're looking here is something that you could put in place, the coverages that you want to look for to make sure that you're properly protected. And that's kind of what this summarizes here. The biggest things, I think, for most people, it's the privacy liability. It goes back to that sensitive information. We've had a breach. What do we do now? And there's a handful of things that are required to avoid large regulatory fines and penalties. You don't want to be completely negligent, just try to sweep stuff under the rug, or that's when they really will ding you. So let's go back to that scenario where we didn't shred some information, and now we've got to notify everybody who's affected. That cost to notify alone, I think the average down here it says is just over 1,300 individuals are affected, roughly $40 per notification. So I think the average claim is around $53,000. That's just to tell people, hey, we might have an issue. Now all of a sudden you've got to set up somewhere where people can go find out if they actually were affected. Anybody that was affected, we're paying for credit monitoring services at this point. We've also got to have an independent forensics analysis done. So somebody's got to come in and figure out the who, what, where, when, and whys. These are just all steps to go into, what it is. Now, if anybody had some sort of a financial distress situation, they were impacted, now we're just going to add that to the rolling total. So it's crucial that you kind of make sure that you're getting, I guess these would be the baseline coverages that you want to find in a cyber policy. The network security, yes, you do have an MSP that's going to provide coverage in the event that it was their fault. But it's any insurance policy. They don't cover everything. And so let's say we're here in Ohio, get hit with an ice storm, power lines go down for a few days. Once AEP gets the power back on, maybe the firewall doesn't kick on. Electrical mechanical disturbances aren't something that are covered by the MSP's policy. And so any subsequent loss, you would be on the hook for. And that can get kind of steep if all of a sudden we're losing data. If we're having some sort of an interruption where we can't operate as normal or have to take time out of our normal business operations to recreate the stuff that we lost, it can be very troublesome for employers to operate under that situation. The privacy, the notification, we kind of got into all of those scenarios. I would just think that the last bullet point there on the right, the cyber extortion. Now, these are the items that, that's the trend going forward. You always hear about this ransomware. They want us paid in Bitcoin, and they're not going to give us back our systems. We do all that we can with our software vendors, our MSPs, best practices. But at the end of the day, these folks are very clever at what they do. So you want to make sure that you've got something to pay those ransoms out if need be. Hopefully we can rely on the backups that we're doing with our MSP, but sometimes those aren't as up to date or as thorough as we'd like them to be. So that's kind of what you're looking at from a coverage standpoint. Let me just look at a couple things here. So yeah, the other big thing, I guess, even if you have these insurance policies in place, it's going to be public record. You know, your competitors are going to know that you've had a breach, and you got to bet that they're going to use that against you. I know after the Gulf oil spill with BP, we're inundated with commercials about come back down to the Gulf, we're back, we're better than ever. You know, and that was to offset some of the interruption for the local businesses and minimize their overall cost and I guess impact on the local economy. But they also wanted to do that to rebrand themselves, you know, show that they were taking the right steps. And that's something that you're going to want to make sure you're able to do is move forward after taking that black eye. Because again, someone like a Target, they can keep operating even though a few people may not feel comfortable using their credit cards at their stores for a while. If you start losing, you know, 25, 35% of your revenues, are you still going to be able to operate? Even though we maybe paid out all the expenses, if we can't keep our clients and our customers and generate that revenue we're used to going forward, we can still be closing our doors in that 6-month window like we talked about. And so that's why you also need the policy that's going to include business interruption. All of a sudden you're unable to operate as normal. You need a policy that's going to make sure that they make you whole and you can continue to make payroll. You can continue to pay the utilities and basically just keep the ship afloat until you get made whole again. Now, one of the things with the cyber extortion, and it kind of gets into, I think this is an area where some folks may think it ties in with the cyber, but it really doesn't, would be the first and third party crime insurance. If we could go over to the next slide, please. I believe it's there. There we go. Okay, so if we have some sort of a loss where we're impacted and it's causing a financial situation to us or our customers, those are the types of things that cyber liability pick up. The area where that stops is when there's a direct loss to money. Someone is stealing from you, basically. This is also known as fidelity insurance. But let's say, and we actually just had one of these in my office today. I'm not making this up, but someone came back here and said, hey, I just received an email from so-and-so asking us to wire some money over or release a payment to one of our customers. And it just came from a weird email, but the signature looks right and all this stuff. And it's that cyber deception component where if we had wired that money from the phishing scam, our cyber wouldn't pick that up. Our MSP's errors and omissions doesn't pick that up. So you need a separate policy to avoid. Basically, it's an authorized payment. We would have, if we gave that away, we would have said, yeah, here you go. And unfortunately, we thought it was someone else. So that's the deceptive side of it. You can always be hacked and, you know, hit where someone steals your money. Those are the areas that just aren't picked up by cyber. Sometimes the banks will help you out, but what we found is as a commercial entity, as a business owner, you don't have the same rights and protections from the banking industry as the personal accounts do. So this is where you would maybe want to look at a component like crime insurance to pick up the gap. Not only that, I mean, I know we don't ever want to think that we're hiring people who would steal, but if you have employees who have access, I mean, everyone anymore takes credit card payments. If one of your employees is holding on to that information and then goes back and hits up a client for money, your regular policies aren't going to pick that up. And I think that's something that most people assume would be there. We cover the rogue employee stuff, but not the direct crime from one of our customers, or even if they stole it from you. You know, they're signing checks to themselves they didn't have authority to do. All those types of things are what you want to roll into a crime insurance policy. So I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people assume that it's covered with their cyber, and it's just a component that isn't. So I think with that, Bob, I'll roll it back over to you unless you have any questions you want me to address.
Cool. So when you talk about how does this wrap into when a company takes a look at their overall insurance, How would you layer this from other types of insurance that a traditional company would have?
Gotcha. You do see some companies that will include a sliver of cyber liability. So you want to have the basic stuff. I mean, everybody should probably have like general liability. If you have employees who drive their vehicles for work, some sort of non-owned auto liability. We want to workers' comps through the state here. Those are things that you pretty much have to be operating. When we look at the cyber, it's not a forced coverage. It's not something that's even required by a lot of folks. But this is more. I'm interested in protecting my business and my best interest. So the cyber, I think, is always going to probably be an addition, even if they're giving you something on your base policies. It's usually a limited coverage, very watered down. So you want to make sure you go get something that is going to be really broad coverage. And I think that's what a lot of the Lloyd's of London type players, the folks that we work with, that's what they're able to offer. So I would include this, the crime insurance. It's not something that has to be a full policy, like at $1 million, $2 million. We could do it at a smaller amount and make sure that something's better than nothing there. So even if it's $100,000 to $200,000, that'll help keep you afloat until you can get things resolved.
Okay, cool. So let me switch over then. And we've already gone through this. And apparently I clicked on the link. Okay. So the one thing I did want to mention that now we get into an advertisement, so everybody can go to sleep, is working with TechRug. One of the things that we're going to be offering, and this is this is specific to our customers and customers who are on the Gold and Platinum, is we're basically giving them a shortcut, if you will, to a $500,000 cyber insurance policy that covers the bullet points you see up here. The price is good. It's actually $475 a year, but it'll end up being about $500, Josh, because of state fees and the like. There are restrictions. This is for smaller companies, less than 75 employees and the like, and you have to reach certain minimal security requirements. So this is a new offer that we're doing, and it is an offer that really comes from TechRug. They're basically partnering with us. We're saying yes, we are covering this company, this customer, with the appropriate layers of cybersecurity. Therefore, they can offer a policy that's this size for this approximate cost. So if you're interested in this, give me a call on that. The only other thing I would say is that this is eerily similar to conversations we had about 10-15 years ago about business continuity and disaster recovery, because the statistics then was if a company had a major interruption in their IT services that they couldn't get back up and running within, I think, a couple of days or the like, within 6 months, 90% of them were out of business. And there was a report or a study that was done on it was right after the big California earthquake back in the 90s, I think it was, that really highlighted and spearheaded that conversation. And because of that, or in spite of that, whatever, you see now a proliferation of business continuity disaster recovery solutions that really primarily came from the backup sector, and now it's really companies that don't have business continuity solutions of some kind are really behind the eight ball. And I see all of this, that whether you look at it from the cyber insurance or cyber insurance being a part of that, you're now seeing that same kind of wave that's hitting here in terms of protection over what happens when something gets through. If you take a look at the FBI's security site or cybersecurity site and their reports, the number of reported events has really not skyrocketed as much as I thought it would, but the financial cost of them has over the past couple of years. I mean, it's still, the growth is still there, but it's been the dollar impact of the events, because as I've said for years now, the bad guys have figured out how to make this pay. And again, they're figuring out how to make it pay for small to medium companies just as much as the big guys. So that would be my comment on all of that. So that's pretty much our topic, and we're actually almost going to finish a couple minutes ahead of time. This is really weird. If anybody has any questions, obviously just send them through the chat. And not seeing anything at this point. So I guess with that, Josh, I'd like to thank you for your help and participation here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yep, cool. And like I said, this will be up on YouTube within a couple of days. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.